Understanding targeted employment areas under the EB-5 program. One of the basic green card eligibility criteria under the EB-5 program is that an immigrant investor must invest in a new commercial enterprise in the United States. The investment must remain at risk for a set period, and it must create 10 full-time jobs for American workers. On March 15, 2022, the United States enacted the EB-5 Reform and Integrity Act of 2022, which established a new EB-5 minimum investment amount of $1,050,000, which drops to $800,000 for projects located within targeted employment areas, or TEAs. TEAs are the areas that would benefit most from the economic growth foreign investment brings, and they are located either within rural areas or within areas experiencing high unemployment. Some types of infrastructure projects also qualify as TEAs. Rural TEAs. A rural TEA is located in an area that is not within a metropolitan statistical area, or MSA, designated by the Office of Management and Budget. A rural TEA must also be located outside of the outer boundaries of cities and towns with populations of 20,000 or more, as measured by the most recent decennial U.S. Census. Rural TEA designation. During the EB-5 process, investors apply for Rural TEA designation directly to the United States Citizenship and Immigration Services, or USCIS, as part of their I-526 petitions. Investors must support their claim that a project falls within a TEA by providing reliable and verifiable data from third parties, such as the U.S. Census Bureau and the Bureau of Labor Statistics. Congress sought to incentivize rural TEA projects through a provision in the EB-5 Reform and Integrity Act of 2022 that created a new category of reserved visas for investors in rural EB-5 projects. By investing in rural projects, EB-5 visa applicants from countries with large numbers of EB-5 investors, especially China, will be able to effectively skip the waiting line and immigrate years sooner than otherwise possible. High unemployment TEAs. High unemployment TEAs are areas that have experienced an average unemployment rate of at least 150% of the national average unemployment rate. For example, using the census share methodology, the national average unemployment rate for 2022 was 5.3%. Therefore, to qualify as a high unemployment TEA, an area must have an employment rate of at least 8%. A high unemployment TEA can be located within an MSA, a particular county within an MSA, a county that contains a town with a population of 20,000 or more, or a city or town with a population of 20,000 or more located outside an MSA. The TEA must also be located within a single census tract, within which the new commercial enterprise is doing business, or in an area made up of combined tracts that are directly adjacent. Under the previous rules, TEAs could be formed by combining multiple contiguous census tracts that were connected but not necessarily directly next to each other, with the combined area qualifying if the overall unemployment rate exceeded the national average. Now the combined tracts must all be directly contiguous to the primary tract, and the weighted average unemployment for the area, based on the labor force employment measure for each tract, must be 150% of the national unemployment average. High unemployment TEA designation. As is the case with rural TEA designation, requests for high unemployment TEAs must be supported with reliable and verifiable data, such as that published by the Bureau of Labor Statistics and the U.S. Census Bureau. To increase the likelihood of success, investors must also set out in their I-526 petitions the methodology used to support the argument that the area is a TEA. The role of set-aside or reserved visas in the EB-5 industry. The EB-5 Reform and Integrity Act of 2022 requires the Department of State to reserve 32% of EB-5 visas each year for investments in targeted employment areas. The 32% of reserved visas can be further categorized as follows: 20% for the rural TEA investments, 10% for high unemployment TEA investments, and 2% for investments in public infrastructure projects. If any reserved visas are left unused at the end of the fiscal year, they will carry over in the same category to the following year. The Department of State has made a total of 19,880 EB-5 visas available for the 2022 fiscal year. As of May 2022, few investors have filed Form I-526 since March 15. Therefore, an estimated of 6,362 visas remain reserved for TEA investors and their qualifying family members. Of these available reserved visas, approximately 3,976 visas are reserved for investments in rural TEAs. Approximately 1,988 and 398 visas are reserved for investments in high unemployment and public infrastructure TEAs, respectively. Additional considerations regarding TEAs. A challenging aspect of the increasingly stringent TEA rules is that an EB-5 project area must qualify as a TEA on the date on which the investor files the I-526 petition, or on the investment date. If the TEA data changes between the date the investment amount is placed in escrow and the date of filing of the I-526 petition, the project may no longer be located in a TEA. Further, areas that qualified as TEAs before March 15, 2022 may no longer qualify. This could affect not only individual projects, but also the activities of regional centers. Thus, before investing in EB-5 projects located in TEAs, investors must conduct careful research. EB-5AN can help you identify high unemployment and rural TEAs. Determining whether an area qualifies as a high unemployment or rural TEA, or whether a project falls within one of these areas, is a critical task. To help you make the right investment decisions, EB-5AN provides an interactive TEA map based on the most recent national and regional unemployment data. The free EB-5AN TEA map covers all 50 states. You can search for any address and combine census tracts to immediately determine whether an area qualifies as a TEA. To find out whether an EB-5 investment qualifies for the lower amount of $800,000, explore our TEA map today.